The galaxy had forgotten them. Once their banners had burned across the stars. Once their ships had carved through empires that called themselves eternal. Once the very word human was enough to silence a council chamber or summon armies to the borders. But that was long ago. Had passed since the last human warship vanished into the void. Since their colonies fell silent. Since there itself was shrouded in myth and dust. Civilizations rose and fell in their absence. Borders shifted, empires clashed. And the memory of humanity became nothing more than a cautionary tale, whispered to ambitious young officers in academies. Never underestimate the ones who burned themselves brighter than suns. No one expected them to return. Not after so long. Not after exile. And yet the first sign came not with fleets, not with armies, but with a whisper. On the edge of the galaxy, a listening post caught a signal. Faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. The operators stared at the data in disbelief. The younger ones laughed, calling it interference, a ghost of ancient code. But the elder, a veteran of a war no one remembered, turned pale. His mandibles clicked in terror. "This is no ghost," he whispered. "This is a warning." For the message was not a plea, not a call for aid. It was a declaration. We are returning. Weeks later, the stars themselves trembled. A lone vessel emerged from the void between galaxies. Its hull was blackened by weapons no one could name. Its design was archaic, angular, brutal in a way modern ships were not. The patrol fleets laughed when they first saw it. One ship against the combined might of the Dominion. Ridiculous. They moved to intercept. Weapons charged. Engines burning bright. And then silence. The human ship did not fire, did not speak. It simply advanced, slow, inevitable, a predator crossing a field of sheep. The alien commander, irritated, ordered an opening barrage. Energy lances struck the hull. Torpedoes detonated in brilliant blossoms of fire. When the light faded, the ship still moved. Smoking, but alive. And in the command center of that lone vessel, a human stood. His uniform was patched, his eyes weary, his hands steady. "Prepare main batteries," he said quietly. There was no panic in his voice. No arrogance. Just calm inevitability. The crew, human, every one of them, answered with a single word that echoed like thunder. Zli. The first volley from the human battleship tore the stars apart. One patrol cruiser, gone. The second shattered. The third tried to flee. It didn't make it 2 kilometers before a kinetic slug punched through its core. The aliens who survived screamed across open comms. "This is impossible. One ship cannot." But one ship did. And as the wreckage drifted, as the battlefield fell silent, every surviving alien heard a voice cut through the void. Calm, cold, human. Mark this day, humanity has returned, and the galaxy will remember us. Panic spread faster than light. News raced through the networks of countless species. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Others, those who remembered the old wars, began to tremble. For they knew humanity had never been strong because of numbers. Never been feared because of ships. They were feared because of something no alien mind could truly understand. Defiance. That relentless, unyielding will to stand against the impossible. And now, after of silence, that fire burned again. But what exile could last so long? What fate had cast humanity into the shadows of forgotten time? And why, after all these endless years, had only a single battleship returned? The galaxy had no answers. Only questions. And a growing fear that the answers would change everything. Why now? That was the question echoing across council halls, war rooms, and backwater taverns. Why, after so many silent, had the humans chosen this moment to reappear? Some said it was a bluff. A relic stumbling from forgotten space, making one last desperate roar before collapsing into the dark. Others whispered of omens, prophecies that spoke of fire and ruin whenever the cursed ones returned. But the wise, the old, the ones who had read the forbidden records of ancient wars, they did not ask why. They asked something far more terrifying. What comes next? In the Galactic Dominion, the Supreme Assembly convened. The chamber stretched 1,000 meters high, filled with voices that could shake mountains and whispers that could topple dynasties. Holograms of the battle replayed above them, a single human warship tearing through Dominion cruisers as if they were paper. The evidence was undeniable, and yet denial was all they had. An isolated incident, one ambassador scoffed, his tendrils curling dismissively. A relic from the past, we will dismantle it. But another voice, an old strategist whose scales bore the cracks of forgotten campaigns, shook her head slowly. You do not understand. This is not about ships. It is not about weapons. It is about them, about humans. Silence fell, because even in a galaxy that had forgotten humanity, the very words still carried a weight no empire could erase. Meanwhile, aboard the battleship, the vessel's name was Iron Requiem, a name etched in fatting paint across her hull, a relic of wars no one remembered. Inside, her crew worked with quiet precision. No celebration followed their victory, no boasts, no drunken toasts. Only silence and determination. The captain stood at the forward viewport, staring at the drifting wreckage of Dominion ships. His face was lined, not from age but from memory. Every scar told a story, every line a choice. Do you think they understand yet? His first officer asked softly. The captain did not answer at first. He watched the flames die in the void, then spoke with the calm certainty of a man who had carried the weight of humanity's exile on his shoulders. No, not yet. They've forgotten who we are, forgotten what we endured. He turned, eyes hard, voice quiet but unyielding. But they will remember. The crew moved like a single heartbeat. Each one bore the legacy of exile. Born in the dark, raised on whispers of earth, a home they had never seen but carried in their blood. Children told stories of oceans they would never touch, of skis they would never fly, of cities that once touched the stars, before fire and betrayal cast them into shadow. Exile was their inheritance, but defiance was their birthright. And now, for the first time they carried that fire back into the galaxy. Rumors spread faster than any ship. On trade stations, merchants lowered their voices when speaking of humans. Some swore the stories were fabrications, Dominion propaganda to scare the outer colonies. But others told different tales of survivors, of ancient battles where humans laughed as they charged into impossible odds, of soldiers who sang songs even as they died, their voices rising over the clash of war like defiance itself. Aliens could not understand it. Why laugh at death? Why smile when the universe itself stood against you? But those who had faced humans before, they remembered. And the memory was enough to chill their blood. Back in the Dominion Assembly, fear began to twist into arrogance. They are few, one admiral declared. We are many, we will crush them as we did before. But the strategist with the scales only lowered her head. You did not crush them, you buried them, there is a difference. The chamber fell silent, because in the depths of their history, hidden, sealed, forbidden, the truth was written in blood. The galaxy had not defeated humanity. It had merely exiled them. On the Iron Requiem, the captain gathered his crew. No long speeches, no grand promises, just words spoken with quiet steel. They think we are broken, they think we are few, they think exile has made us weak. He paused, scanning the faces of his people, soldiers, engineers, pilots, survivors. They have forgotten, exile forged us, exile tempered us, and when they see what remains of us, they will understand what it means to be human. A hush fell, and then as one the crew struck their fists to their chests. A sound like thunder echoing through steel. For in that moment they were not exiles, not outcasts. They were humanity. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the galaxy listened. Empires prepared their fleets. Worlds whispered in fear. And the Dominion swore it would end this human return before it began. But deep down in the cold places no one dared to speak of, a single truth stirred. They had seen one ship, one captain, one fragment of humanity, and already the galaxy trembled. Because humanity's power had never been in numbers, never in fleets, never in weapons. It was in their refusal to surrender, in their laughter at the impossible, in the fire that no exile, no empire, no eternity could ever extinguish. And now that fire had returned. How do you destroy a nightmare? That was the question on every Dominion tongue. For if the humans were truly back, if exile had not erased them, then they were not just a threat. They were a shadow stretching across the future itself. So the Dominion did what empires always do. They gathered fleets. They summoned admirals. They forged weapons greater than any used in the wars of old. And in secret, they swore to erase humanity a second time. The armada formed near the Star of Prime. Hundreds of ships, sleek destroyers, heavy carriers, dreadnoughts bristling with weapons capable of cracking moons. They called it Operation Silence, a name chosen with deliberate arrogance. For the plan was simple: overwhelm the lone human ship, erase it, and smother the spark before it grew into flame. Reports spread across the galaxy, carried by rumor and fear. Aliens whispered in back alleys and marketplaces. Some believed the Dominion's victory was inevitable. Others remembered the old stories and prayed they were wrong. Aboard the Iron Requiem, the crew received the news. A fleet 100 strong. A storm of fire and steel waiting at Prime. The younger crew members paled. Even the veterans exchanged uneasy glances. But the captain only smiled. Not a smile of arrogance. Not bravado, but a weary, defiant smile that carried the weight of exile and memory. They believe numbers will save them, he said quietly. They have forgotten who we are. That night the crew gathered in the mess. No lights but the dim glow of stars through the viewport. No chatter, no laughter, only silence. And then one of the youngest stood. Barely 20, born in exile, she had never seen Earth, never walked under a sky. "Captain," she asked softly, "why do we fight? We are one ship, they are countless. Even if we win one battle, we cannot win the war." Her words trembled, but they were true. And in the silence that followed, the crew waited. The captain rose slowly, his gaze sweeping across them. "You think exile broke us? It did not. It forged us." He stepped closer, voice steady, measured, every word heavy with fire. "We fight because they told us we could not. We fight because the galaxy believes we are finished. We fight because when humanity is told to kneel, we stand." He turned to the young woman, his eyes burning with the same defiance that had carried humanity across of silence. "We do not fight to win, child. We fight so they will never forget who we are." And in that moment, fear gave way to something stronger. Not hope, not certainty, but the quiet, unbreakable resolve that only humans could carry. The Dominion armada waited. Hundreds of ships aligned, weapons primed. The admirals boasted over comms, voices dripping with contempt. "This will be brief. One ship cannot challenge the Dominion. We will scatter their ashes across Prime." And then the void trembled. The Iron Requiem emerged from hyperspace, alone, small against the sea of enemy ships. The Dominion laughed. And then the human captain's voice cut through the silence of space. Calm, cold, steady. "We are humanity. We are exile's children. You will not silence us again." The battle began in fire. Waves of missiles streaked toward the human ship. Swarms of interceptors descended like locusts. Beams of energy lanced across the dark, painting the void in violent brilliance. And still the iron Requiem advanced. Her shields flared, her armor cracked, but she endured. Every strike was answered. Every ship that closed was shattered. The Dominion had numbers, they had weapons, they had strategy. But the humans had something else. They had will. Inside the bridge, alarms screamed. Bulkheads buckled, flames licked at the edges of consoles. And yet the crew fought with grim determination. No despair. No surrender. One officer shouted as her station exploded, blood running down her face. Main battery locked, targets in range. The captain's voice never wavered. Fire! And the void tore open as tungsten slugs ripped through Dominion cruisers like paper. From the outside, it looked like madness. One ship hurling itself against an armada. One captain daring to defy inevitability. But for those who watched, something else became clear. Humans did not fight wars the way others did. They did not surrender when logic demanded it. They did not break when hope was gone. They fought because to stop fighting was to stop being human. The battle raged for hours. Dozens of Dominion ships fell. Hundreds of fighters scattered as the iron Requiem carved through them. But the cost was heavy. Hull breaches spread, decks collapsed, casualties mounted. Still, the humans fought on. Until at last, when the armada wavered, when fear began to creep into alien hearts, the captain spoke once more. They thought Exile broke us, but Exile gave us fire. His words carried across every open channel, echoing in every alien ear. They thought we were gone, but we endured. And as his ship burned, as the Dominion reeled, his final words seared into the galaxy like a brand. We are humanity, remember us. And for the first time in living memory, the Dominion hesitated. For the first time, they felt it. Not fear of a fleet. Not fear of a weapon. But fear of a people who refused to die. The galaxy had seen many battles. Worlds burned, empires shattered. But Prime was different. Because there, the impossible had walked among the stars again. Because there, a single human ship had stood against an armada and lived. The Dominion called it a strategic victory. They pointed to the wreckage of the iron Requiem, the battered state of her hull, the dead littering her decks. But the galaxy was not fooled. Every recording, every transmission, every whisper that leaked beyond the Dominion told the same truth. One ship stood against hundreds. And it did not fall. Merchants repeated the tale in hushed tones. Children on distant colonies mimicked the captain's final words. And in the deepest places, where memory still lingered, the oldest races felt a chill crawl across their spines. Humanity had returned. Aboard the iron Requiem, the crew buried their dead. There were no graves in the void. Only names spoken into the dark. The captain stood silent as each one was read, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes unblinking. When the last name faded, he spoke. Not loudly, not proudly, but with quiet certainty. They are not gone, they live in us. In every shot we fire, in every step we take forward, they endure because we endure. And the crew, bloodied and weary, answered as one. Lie. The ship limped into the shadow of a dead star to repair. Hull plating welded by weary hands. Systems patched with fragments of scrap. Every deck echoed with the sound of survival. It was there, in the silence of repair, that the young officer approached the captain again. She had asked him before why they fought. Now she asked something deeper. Why were we exiled? Why did the galaxy bury us? For she had grown in darkness. She had heard whispers, fragments of stories, half-truths and myths. But never the truth. The captain did not answer at once. He stared into the void where stars glimmered like distant memories. "Because we frightened them," he said at last. "Because they saw what we were and what we might become." He told her pieces, shards of history buried in silence. Of the wars fought ago, when humanity first spread across the stars. Of victories won against impossible odds, empires humbled, tyrants toppled. But it was not conquest that damned them. It was the one thing the galaxy could not understand. "We did not fight for empire," he said. "We did not fight for domination. We fought because we would not kneel, because we would rather burn than bow." And to the galaxy, that was the most dangerous truth of all. For how do you rule a people who will not be ruled? How do you break a species that finds strength in its own suffering? You don't. You exile them. You bury them. You scatter them into the void and pray they never return. The young officer was silent for a long time. Her eyes burned with questions, but none she could give voice to. At last she whispered, "And now that we are back, what do we seek?" The captain turned to her. His face was weathered, his gaze sharp as steel. Not vengeance, not conquest. He placed a hand on her shoulder, heavy with the weight of only remembrance. The galaxy must never forget us again. While the iron requiem repaired in silence, the galaxy roared. The Dominion poured fleets into preparation. The Assembly declared a new crusade, calling humanity a plague, a contagion that must be erased. But beyond Dominion space, something else stirred. On border worlds, slaves whispered of rebellion. On forgotten colonies, children spoke the human name with awe. And among the oldest species, those who remembered humanity not as myth, but as enemy, old fears resurfaced. They had defeated humanity once only by uniting. Would they need to unite again? And worse, could they? In the shadow of the dead star, the captain stood alone on the observation deck. He thought of Earth, his Earth, the one he had never seen but had carried in his heart all his life. Oceans he had never touched, skis he had never flown beneath, cities that were ashes before his birth. Humanity had lost so much, and yet they endured. He whispered to the void, not as a commander, not as a soldier, but as a man. "We are still here." The crew did not sleep easily that night. Dreams came haunted by fire and shadow, by exile, by the faces of the dead. And yet when dawn came, or what passed for dawn in the eternal night of space, they rose. Hands blistered, bodies bruised, but hearts unbroken, because they were human, and humans endured. But what lay ahead? The Dominion was vast, its fleets endless. One ship, even a ship as fierce as the Iron Requiem, could not topple it alone. And yet the galaxy was beginning to stir. Fear was turning to memory. Memory into whispers. And whispers into something more dangerous. Hope. The captain knew what was coming. War, fire, loss. The galaxy would not forgive humanity's return. But forgiveness was never what they sought. They sought only this: that when the galaxy looked to the stars, it would see them again. It would remember the exiles who refused to die. And in remembering, it would tremble. How do you kill an idea? You can burn worlds, you can silence voices, you can bury history beneath 1,000 lies. But when the truth claws its way back into the light, when it refuses to die, how do you kill it then? The Dominion asked itself that question every waking moment after Prime. For the humans had not merely survived. They had ignited something the Dominion feared more than any weapon. Memory. The trap was set. The Dominion's high command declared it an honor operation, though the word tasted like ash. They would draw the Iron Requiem into a noose so vast, so absolute, that no defiance could slip free. Fleets gathered in the expanse, a stretch of space littered with iron storms and shattered moons, perfect terrain for ambush. Hundreds of cruisers, dozens of dreadnoughts, entire carrier groups, their hangars swollen with interceptors. The trap was vast enough to swallow entire empires. And yet it was designed for one ship. One human ship. But the galaxy was watching now. Every system tuned into the whispers. Every species waited with bated breath. Would the humans fall? Would the Dominion finally erase the nightmare? Or would the impossible happen again? On the Iron Requiem, the crew studied the reports. "We can't fight that," one officer muttered, his voice trembling. "It's not a fleet, it's annihilation." Others looked to the captain, waiting for orders, for hope, for some impossible plan. He stood silent for a long moment, staring at the tactical map, the noose closing around them. Finally, he spoke. "They believe we came here to win battles." His voice was calm, almost weary. "They are wrong. We came here to be remembered." The young officer clenched her fists. "Then what do we do?" The captain turned, his eyes burning with quiet fire. "We fight." The Iron Requiem entered the expanse. Storms raged across the void, lightning tearing at the hull. Asteroids drifted like the bones of dead worlds. And in the darkness, the Dominion waited. Their fleets ignited like 1,000 suns. Weapons locked, engines roared. The trap closed. The first barrage struck like the wrath of gods. Energy beams seared across the human hull. Missiles detonated in brilliant fury. But still, the Iron Requiem endured. Her guns roared back, shattering the void with tungsten slugs and nuclear fire. One Dominion cruiser fell, then another, then a third. But the numbers were overwhelming. On the bridge, alarms screamed, consoles sparked, hull plating peeled away. Yet the crew fought with a madness no alien could comprehend. Not because they believed they could win, but because surrender was not in their blood. And far beyond the battle, in the markets of distant colonies, smugglers streamed forbidden transmissions across every frequency they could touch. Children huddled around flickering screens, watching grainy feeds of a human ship defying an empire. Slaves whispered in their chains. Soldiers in foreign armies felt something stir in their chests that their commanders could not name. The humans were fighting, and the galaxy was watching. Back in the battle, Dominion commanders shouted in fury. Why do they not break? How can one ship endure so much? This is impossible. But the answer was simple. They were fighting humans. Inside the burning corridors of the Iron Requiem, the young officer dragged a wounded comrade through smoke and fire. Her body ached, her lungs screamed, but she kept moving. Because that was what it meant to be human. To keep moving, even when every step was agony. To keep fighting, even when the war was lost. The captain stood at his post, calm amid chaos. "They think Exile erased us," he murmured, his voice carrying through the smoke. But Exile made us stronger. Every child born in darkness carried the fire forward, and now the fire burns in them. His hand tightened on the console. "And you." The Dominion pressed harder, more ships, more fire. The noose tightened. But the galaxy was no longer blind. Every transmission that leaked from the battle spread across systems like wildfire. And for the first time in, species who had once cheered humanity's exile now whispered another word. Hope. The captain gave his final order that day. Not to surrender, not to retreat. "Broadcast us," he commanded. "Every channel, every frequency, let the galaxy see us burn." The crew obeyed. Across the stars, countless worlds watched as the Iron Requiem fought its impossible war. They saw humans laugh through the fire. They saw humans bleed and rise again. They saw a people who would not die quietly. And in the silence of their hearts, something ancient stirred. The memory of defiance. The memory of humanity. The battle raged on. The Dominion could claim victory, perhaps. The humans could not hold forever. But already the greater war was lost. For in trying to silence humanity, The Dominion had given them the loudest voice in the galaxy. And now everyone was listening. Symbols are more dangerous than fleets. Empires can crush armies, they can burn worlds. But a symbol cannot be killed so easily. And now, in every shadowed corner of the galaxy, humanity had become that symbol. The Dominion declared victory in the expanse. Their broadcasts were loud, their words certain. The human ship has been destroyed. The threat is ended. Exile endures. But the galaxy had seen the truth. The footage of the Iron Requiem burning through the void spread like wildfire, carried in secret channels, whispered in taverns, scrawled on the walls of slave barracks. And everywhere the message was the same. They are back. They fought the impossible, and they endured. On the Dominion border worlds, riots began. Workers threw down their tools. Soldiers turned their weapons on overseers. Chains were broken, banners burned. And in the chaos, one word rose above all others. Humans. Inside the Dominion Assembly, panic festered. This cannot be allowed, one senator shrieked, his frills trembling. They are spreading rebellion across the stars. They are one ship, another snapped. One ship cannot topple an empire. But the old strategist with the scales spoke softly, her voice cutting deeper than any shout. You do not understand. It was never about the ship. It was never about the battles. She leaned forward, her eyes burning with ancient memory. It was always about what they awaken in others. And the chamber fell silent. Aboard the Iron Requiem, silence of a different kind reigned. The ship floated in the ruins of a dead moon, her hull blackened, her systems failing. Entire sections were open to the void, bodies drifting in frozen silence. The survivors worked with bleeding hands, patching what they could, salvaging from wreckage. The young officer sat on the floor of a shattered corridor, exhaustion pressing down like gravity. Her body ached, her spirit trembled. And yet when she closed her eyes, she saw them. Children in colonies, whispering the word human. Workers raising their fists. Slaves daring to hope. And she understood. They were no longer just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for all who had forgotten how. The captain limped through the corridor, his uniform torn, his face lined with smoke and blood. He sat beside her without a word. For a long time they watched the stars through a jagged hole in the hull. Finally she asked, voice low, "Do you think they will rise? Do you think the galaxy will fight?" The captain's eyes never left the stars. "They already are," he whispered. Reports filtered in, smuggled through broken channels. On a mining world, slaves seized a transport and scrawled a single word across its hull before escaping: human. On a Dominion garrison, soldiers, shouting that they would fight like the exiles. On distant stations, songs spread, songs of defiance, of laughter in the face of death, sung in languages long forgotten but carrying the same fire. The Iron Requiem had become more than steel. It had become memory. It had become defiance itself. The Dominion struck back with fury. Fleets razed rebellious colonies, armies slaughtered civilians, entire cities were reduced to ash. But the harder they struck, the louder the whispers grew. Every atrocity was compared to the humans' exile. Every scream became fuel for the fire. And soon, even those who had once feared humanity began to ask themselves the forbidden question. What if the exiles were right? On the bridge of the Iron Requiem, the captain addressed his crew. "We are not an army," he said. "We are not a fleet, we are a flame." He looked at each of them, weary yet unbroken. "They will try to snuff us out, they may succeed, but the flame will not die with us, it will spread, it already has." The crew listened in silence, their eyes burning. And for the first time since exile began, they felt it not as burden, but as destiny. Far away, in places no Dominion eye could see, cells began to form. Not just humans, there were none left beyond the Iron Requiem. But aliens, Entire species who had once scorned the name now carried it like a banner. They painted it on walls. They carved it into stone. They whispered it in the dark. Human, not as curse, not as warning, but as promise. The Dominion's admirals raged, their fleets swelled, their armies prepared for war unlike any fought in. But something had shifted, something they could not touch. The humans had returned, and in doing so, they had reminded the galaxy of something older than empires, stronger than armies. That even in exile, even in silence, the human spirit endured. The captain stood once more before the stars, his voice low but certain. They thought exile erased us, but exile only carved us deeper into history. They thought they buried us, but you cannot bury fire. He turned to his crew, his eyes unyielding. They will come for us with everything they have, and when they do, we will show them what exile made of us. And far beyond, across 1,000 worlds, voices rose in unison. In chains, in shadows, in defiance, we are human. What do empires fear most? Not invasion, not famine, not even collapse. What empires fear is losing control. And now, control was slipping from the Dominion's grasp. Riots burned across its outer colonies. Workers threw down tools, soldiers turned on commanders. Slaves tore chains from their necks and raised weapons in trembling hands. Everywhere, the word human lit the fires of defiance. And the Dominion was afraid. So they prepared their answer. The final edict. A command whispered in ancient halls, never before spoken in living memory. The entire might of the Dominion would be gathered. Every fleet, every dreadnought, every weapon that could tear a planet in two. Not against an empire. Not against a coalition. Against one ship. The Iron Requiem. High Command declared it openly. The humans will be erased. Their ship will be shattered. Their memory burned from the galaxy. But beneath the bravado, fear twisted like a knife. Because they remembered what they had once done to humanity. And they knew it had not been enough. The Iron Requiem, the crew received the news. An armada beyond measure. An ocean of fire closing in. For a long time, no one spoke. The air was thick with the weight of inevitability. Then the captain broke the silence. "Good," he said softly. Eyes turned to him, wide with disbelief. "Good." He nodded, calm, inevitable. "If they are bringing everything, it means we have already won." The young officer frowned. "How can you say that? We cannot survive this, you know that." The captain turned to her, his gaze steady. "We were never fighting to survive. We were fighting to be remembered. And if the Dominion must bring the whole galaxy's weight to crush us, then the galaxy will never forget." Repairs continued in silence. Hands blistered, bodies weary. But the crew worked as though they were building not a ship, but a monument. Because they knew. The Iron Requiem would not live forever. But her fire would. Meanwhile, across the stars, the rebellion spread like wildfire. On a jungle world, enslaved miners rose with stolen rifles, painting human symbols on their armor. On a desert colony, soldiers sang ancient Earth songs before charging into impossible battles. On stations and ships and hidden camps, leaders invoked a name no longer spoken as curse, but as oath. Human. And though the rebels were scattered, leaderless, uncoordinated, they carried the one thing the Dominion could not erase. Defiance. The Dominion's admirals raged in their war councils. They are infecting the galaxy. They are nothing, they are vermin. But the old strategist with the scales shook her head slowly. "They are more dangerous than vermin," she whispered. "They are human, and you cannot cage fire." As the Dominion armada gathered, the Iron Requiem prepared for its final stand. Every weapon was primed, every system jury-rigged, Every soul aboard knew what was coming. Yet there was no despair. Only silence. And beneath the silence, a fire. The young officer found the captain alone once more, standing before the viewport, watching the stars. "You knew this was coming," she said quietly. "Yes. And you're ready to die." He did not answer at once. His eyes lingered on the void where countless ships would soon descend. Finally, he spoke. "I am ready for humanity to live." The words struck her like a blade. Because she understood. This was never about victory. Never about conquest. It was about legacy. About carrying the flame through exile, through silence, through one final battle, so that others would take it up when they fell. The Dominion fleets drew near. Worlds trembled, stations prepared for war. And across the galaxy, billions waited. Not for the Dominion. Not for their empires. They waited for the humans. The captain gave his final address to the crew. "They will come for us with everything, with fire, with steel, with hatred." He paused, his voice steady, his gaze unshakable. "They will try to break us, but they cannot, because we are already more than a ship, more than exiles. We are a memory made flesh. We are the fire they could not kill." He drew a long breath. "And when the end comes, let the galaxy see us burn bright enough that the darkness never forgets." The crew struck their fists to their chests, voices thundering as one. "For humanity." And somewhere across 1,000 stars, voices answered. In whispers, in shouts, in defiance. For humanity. The stage was set. The Dominion's greatest armada in history. Against one ship. One ship that refused to die. One ship carrying the weight of exile, of memory, of a species forgotten but not broken. The Iron Requiem. And in that silence before the storm, the galaxy held its breath. Because deep down they all knew. The battle ahead was not about survival. It was about what would be remembered. What does it mean to win? Is it to destroy your enemy? To outlast them? To claim the field when the smoke clears? Or is it something greater? Perhaps to win is to ensure you are never forgotten. The Dominion Armada arrived like the end of days. Thousands of warships. Cannons primed to shatter moons. An ocean of firepower that dwarfed imagination. Against them one ship. The Iron Requiem. The captain stood tall on the bridge, his crew at their stations. Every system screamed warnings. The ship was half dead already. And yet, in that moment, the crew felt no fear. Only purpose. Because they knew this was not the end. This was the beginning. The first volley struck. The Requiem shook, her hull splitting further. Fires roared. But her guns answered, lancing through the void, tearing through ships meant to outnumber and overwhelm. Each blast a defiant roar, "We are still here." The Dominion swarmed, encircling, hammering from every angle. And still the humans laughed. In the smoke-filled corridors, bleeding and broken, they laughed as they fired, as they fought, as they refused to bow. The young officer shouted over the chaos, "Why are you smiling?" The captain's teeth shone white through the blood. Because they still don't understand. They've brought an armada to kill a memory, and you can't kill memory. Hours passed like seconds. The Iron Requiem was torn apart piece by piece. Entire decks vented to the void. But for every wound, the humans struck back. A dreadnought gutted. A cruiser shattered. A carrier burning. The Dominion paid for every inch with blood and steel. And across the galaxy, the battle was broadcast. The Dominion wanted to show victory. But the rebels, the hidden, the enslaved, the silent watchers saw something else. They saw one ship against the impossible. They saw humans laughing in the face of annihilation. They saw defiance incarnate. And they whispered together in awe, in fire and fury. This is humanity. The end came slowly. The Requiem's engines were gone, her weapons silent, her crew few and fatting. The captain stood on the ruined bridge, glass shattered around him, stars blazing like 1,000 eyes. The young officer limped to his side. "This is it," she whispered. He nodded, calm, certain. "Then let's make sure they never forget." He opened the comms, not to the Dominion, not to his enemies, but to the galaxy. His voice carried through the void, ragged but unbroken. "We are humanity. You tried to bury us. You tried to erase us. You thought exile could break us, but exile only forged us." He drew a breath, smoke filling his lungs. "You may kill us, you may burn this ship, but you cannot kill what we are, you cannot kill defiance, you cannot kill hope, you cannot kill human." The Dominion admiral sneered as the final order was given. "End it." The fleets fired as one. An ocean of light. A storm to erase a species. And in that storm, the iron Requiem burned brighter than ever before. Her core ruptured. Her hull split. Her heart exploded in a blaze that lit the void like a second sun. And in that moment, across every world, every colony, every rebel camp, the name echoed louder than ever before. Humans. The Dominion destroyed a ship. But in doing so, they created a legend. The galaxy had seen what humans were. What they had always been. Not conquerors, not monsters, not exiles. But fire. Unyielding, unstoppable fire. In the centuries that followed, the rebellion grew. Species once cowed rose up together, carrying banners marked with a single word. Worlds broke chains, empires fell. And always, always, the humans were remembered. Children asked, "Are they real?" Elders answered, "They were, and because they were, we are free." And somewhere in the silence between stars, their memory remained. Not in monuments, not in ruins, but in the hearts of those who dared to fight, to laugh, to hope. Because humanity was never truly gone. Humanity lived wherever defiance burned. And so, when the last Dominion fortress fell, when the galaxy finally stood free, the victors spoke not of kings or armies. They spoke of a ship, a broken, burning ship, and of the exiles who refused to die quietly. In whispers and in songs, they said it simply. The humans returned. And in the endless dark, where stars are born and empires crumble, the fire of humanity burns still. Unstoppable, unforgiving, unforgotten,